The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the cramped control room. Alarms blared as the cold, lifeless voice of the automated defense system droned. Hostile contacts detected, Sector 9. The outpost had been quiet for months, nestled in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Too quiet, Captain Elias Ward thought. Something was bound to break the silence eventually, and now it had. Captain, multiple energy signatures closing fast, called Lieutenant Mara Kane, her voice tinged with urgency. Her hands danced across the console as she projected a tactical display onto the screen. Dozens of red blips swarmed toward the outpost, their speed indicating one thing: Zyrex hunters. Ward leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the display. This isn't a raid. It's a hunt, he said, more to himself than anyone else. He straightened, the weight of command settling across his shoulders. They were outnumbered, cut off, and facing an enemy notorious for wiping out entire civilizations. But if there was one thing Ward knew, it was that desperation could forge the sharpest blades. Sound the alert, he ordered, his tone steely. Get every soldier armed and in position. We hold the line here. Mara hesitated, her gaze flicking to Ward's scarred face. We're barely equipped for this, sir. Reinforcements are days away, if they even get here. Ward's eyes hardened. Then we fight like we're all that's left, because we might be. He glanced at the screen, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his lips. And the Zyrex don't know it yet, but they've walked straight into a trap. The outpost corridors buzzed with activity as soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. Mara fell into step beside Ward, checking her rifle as they moved. You've got a plan? She asked, her voice low. Always, Ward replied. The Zyrex think they're the apex predators. They rely on speed and overwhelming force, but they're predictable. We're going to make them pay for that arrogance. The tension in the air thickened as the countdown to impact ticked away. Outside, in the frozen expanse of space, the first Zyrex ships breached the perimeter, sleek and bristling with weapons. The creatures within them lived for the thrill of the hunt, savoring the fear of their prey. They expected another easy kill. They were wrong. Now! Ward barked. The outpost shields dropped for a split second, drawing the Zyrex closer. At that precise moment, hidden turrets erupted from the ground, unleashing a torrent of firepower. Plasma bolts streaked through the void, tearing into the first wave of invaders. The Zyrex fighters shrieked in confusion, their formation breaking as they tried to regroup. Good, they're scattering, Mara observed, eyes locked on the tactical display. But they'll adapt fast. Ward nodded. We've got one shot to cripple them. Prep the ion cannons and focus fire on their command ship. Cut off the head, and the body dies. As Mara relayed orders, the outpost shook under the strain of the Zyrex assault. Explosions rocked the facility, sending sparks and debris cascading from the ceiling. Through it all, Ward remained a pillar of calm, calculating every move, every sacrifice. Sir, hull integrity at 70%. We're taking heavy hits, Mara warned. Ward's gaze never wavered. Hold steady. We take them down here, or we don't make it out at all. The command ship loomed on the display, a predatory hulk surrounded by smaller escorts. It was the heart of the Zyrex pack, their coordination hub. If they could take it out, the swarm would lose cohesion. But as they prepared for the final strike, a new alarm blared. Additional Zyrex forces were inbound. More of them? Mara muttered, her hands tightening on her weapon. We're running out of time. Ward's expression turned grim. Then let's make these moments count. Outside, the ion cannons powered up, locking onto the command ship. The final shot would either break the hunters or doom humanity's last stand on this forgotten outpost. The hum of the failing shields echoed through the cramped command room, a grim reminder of time slipping away. Lieutenant Mara Kane's voice cut through the tension like a razor. Captain, they're adapting. We can't keep this up much longer. Captain Elias Ward's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. The Zyrex swarmed outside the outpost like a living wave, twisting and reforming as they tried to find a weak spot. Their hive mind coordination was deadly, Each failed attack only made them more efficient. Yet Ward's gaze was calculating, as if seeing the battlefield 10 moves ahead. "Let them adapt," Ward muttered. "They think we're on the back foot. It's time we turn the tables." Mara's brow furrowed. "Sir, are you suggesting?" "Exactly. We take the fight to them," Ward replied, a steely resolve hardening his tone. "We've been on defense too long. It's time to strike back where they least expect it." As the order was relayed, Mara led a small strike team toward the outer trenches. The corridor lights flickered ominously, and the smell of burnt electronics hung heavy in the air. Every creak and distant explosion added to the tension. Despite her resolve, a cold knot twisted in her gut. "Stay sharp, eyes peeled," Mara whispered as they reached the breach point. The team crouched low, blending into the shadows of the narrow passageways. The sounds of scraping claws and guttural hisses echoed from above. A Zyrex hunting pack was moving in. The plan was simple in concept but perilous in execution: lure the pack into a kill zone and deliver a crippling blow. The Zyrex relied on overwhelming strength and pack tactics, but they were also creatures of habit. Predictability could be a fatal flaw. The hunters slithered closer, their low growls reverberating in the enclosed space. Mara's grip tightened on her rifle. Just a few more steps, she thought. Sweat trickled down her temple as she locked eyes with Ward, who watched the situation unfold from the command center. "Now!" Ward's voice crackled over the comms. Mara's squad unleashed a volley of gunfire, targeting the lead Zyrex. The creatures shrieked, recoiling in surprise, but quickly regrouped. They charged, claws tearing through metal, eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. But they were met with more than just bullets. Hidden charges detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through the passage. The Zyrex were thrown into disarray, half the pack obliterated in seconds. "Pull back! Regroup at the junction!" Mara ordered, leading her team through narrow side tunnels. The surviving Zyrex pursued, enraged and desperate to regain control. But this was Ward's game now. The humans had the high ground, both physically and tactically. As the Zyrex funneled into the choke point, another barrage of explosives triggered. The corridor filled with debris and smoke, trapping the alien hunters in a twisted wreckage. With precision strikes, Mara's team picked off the remaining Zyrex, their disciplined fire contrasting with the creature's frantic fury. In the aftermath, silence fell, broken only by the distant hum of the outpost's damaged systems. Mara's breath came in ragged gasps as she leaned against the wall, adrenaline still surging through her veins. She opened a channel to Ward. "We've neutralized the pack, but they'll send more. This won't hold them forever." Ward's voice was steady, but beneath it was a note of grim determination. "We've done what we needed, forced them to rethink. Now they'll hesitate, and that buys us time. But we're not done yet." Mara could hear the underlying fatigue in his words, but there was no room for doubt. "Understood, Captain. What's the next move?" Ward's response was cold and measured. "We bleed them dry, one wave at a time. And when they're at their weakest, we'll strike at their heart. We're not just surviving, we're making them regret ever setting foot in human space." The tension crackled between them, a shared understanding of the stakes. They were fighting against impossible odds, but for the first time, the predators had been wounded. The chapter ends with Mara's team returning to prepare for the next phase, their resolve hardening as the looming darkness outside grows thicker. The air was thick with anticipation as Captain Ward studied the latest intel on the Zyrex hive structure. Dim lighting bathed the command center in shadows, highlighting the lines of exhaustion etched on every crew member's face. But behind the weariness was something new, a spark of determination. "They've been sending their scouts out further, testing our defenses. We've poked the hive, and now they're agitated," Ward said, his voice low but firm. Mara nodded, her jaw tight. "Then it's time to hit them before they regroup. We can't afford to let them gather momentum." Ward's eyes narrowed as he traced the projected path of the enemy. "Agreed. We need to strike at their core, take out the Queen. Without her, they'll fall apart, no coordination, no purpose. But getting there means crossing the heart of their territory. They'll throw everything they have at us. The gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air, but there was no hesitation in their decision. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Humanity needed to make a statement. They would show the galaxy that humans weren't prey. They were a force to be reckoned with. The mission briefing was swift, every detail meticulously planned. Mara led the strike team once more, but this time, they were armed with more than just weapons. They carried the weight of hope for everyone left on the outpost. As they moved through the cold, dim corridors toward the launch bay, a sense of finality settled over them. "Stay focused," Mara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't get a second chance at this. We push through, no matter what they throw at us." The team loaded into the sleek dropship, the hum of the engines thrumming beneath their feet. Silence reigned as the ship hurtled toward the Zyrex hive. Outside, space loomed vast and indifferent, a backdrop to the deadly dance about to unfold. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind was sharp, calculating every possible outcome. The first wave hit as they breached the outer perimeter of the hive, dozens of Zyrex fighters converging in a coordinated assault. The dropship shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring as shields flared and sputtered. "Hold steady!" Mara barked, gripping her harness as the ship weaved and dodged incoming fire. But the real challenge was inside. As the team landed and breached the hive, the walls seemed alive, pulsating with an eerie, organic glow. The stench of decay mixed with the sharp tang of alien pheromones. The Zyrex were relentless, swarming the team in waves. Screeches echoed through the narrow tunnels as gunfire and claws clashed in a deadly symphony. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls closed in, the temperature rising, as if the hive itself sensed the intrusion. But Mara and her team pressed on, every step closer to the queen, a monstrous creature nestled at the heart of the hive, commanding the swarm with a telepathic grip. "Eyes on the prize!" Mara shouted as they entered the central chamber. The queen's eyes locked onto them, filled with an intelligence that was both alien and malevolent. The battle that followed was chaos. Explosions rocked the chamber, acidic blood hissed as it splattered on armor, and the roars of dying Zyrex filled the air. It was Ward's plan that tipped the scales. As the team fought to hold the line, a precision strike from orbit targeted the queen's exposed form. The blast was blinding, a searing light that obliterated everything in its path. When the dust settled, the queen lay in ruins, her form crumpled and lifeless. But there was no time to celebrate. The hive quaked, destabilized by the death of its heart. "Move! Get out now!" Mara yelled as the team sprinted back to the dropship, the walls collapsing behind them. They barely escaped, the ship rocketing out of the disintegrating hive just as it imploded. Back on the outpost, Ward watched as the hive's destruction was confirmed. The Zyrex fleet, now leaderless, splintered in confusion. The tides had turned, but the battle wasn't over yet. They had dealt a crippling blow, but retaliation was inevitable. For now, they had won a reprieve. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the galaxy learned just how dangerous a cornered species could be. The outpost was eerily quiet in the aftermath of the hive's destruction. The tension that hung over the crew was like a coiled spring, ready to snap. Captain Ward stood at the observation deck, his eyes locked on the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Zyrex fleet were regrouping, and he knew they wouldn't stay disoriented for long. "They'll be back. Stronger and angrier," Ward muttered to himself, his jaw clenched. He turned to Mara, who had just entered the room, her armor still streaked with dried ichor from the hive raid. "How's the team holding up?" Mara leaned against the console, her exhaustion hidden behind the sharp focus in her gaze. "Tired but ready. We can't let them regroup. The Queen's death shook them, but they're adapting. We need to hit them before they can re-establish command." Ward nodded. "We'll throw everything we have at them, one final push. We either break their back or we're done for. They'll send everything, they won't risk another loss like this." The strategy was desperate but calculated. Ward planned to lure the Zyrex fleet into a trap, a feigned retreat that would draw them into a kill zone. The outpost's limited resources were stretched to their breaking point, with every turret, drone, and missile prepared for one coordinated strike. It was a gamble, but if it worked, they could cripple the Zyrex forces once and for all. As the crew scrambled to prepare, Mara took a moment to breathe, watching the stars with a quiet intensity. "We've always been underestimated," she whispered. "Predators think humans are easy prey, until we bite back." The tension mounted as the Zyrex fleet emerged from the void, a dark swarm blotting out the stars. The outpost's defenses sprang to life, launching wave after wave of firepower. But the Zyrex had adapted. They maneuvered with terrifying precision, coordinating in ways that suggested a new command structure was already taking shape. The trap was set, but the question lingered, would it be enough? "Hold the line!" Ward's voice cut through the chaos. The outpost shuddered as explosions rocked the hull. The command center was a frenzy of alerts, tactical readouts, and rapid-fire commands. Mara's eyes darted across the screens, tracking the enemy's movements, searching for the critical moment to spring the trap. "Now!" she shouted. The feigned retreat began. The human ships peeled away, leading the Zyrex deeper into the ambush zone. For a split second, it seemed like the gambit had failed. The Zyrex hesitated, sensing the deception. But their bloodlust won out, and they surged forward, right into the kill zone. "Fire everything!" Ward commanded, his voice hard with resolve. The space around the outpost erupted in a cascade of light and fire. The coordinated barrage tore through the Zyrex ranks, turning their tight formations into chaos. The swarm splintered as ship after ship was vaporized in the onslaught. For a moment, it seemed as though victory was within reach, until a new signal appeared on the radar. "Their flagship," Mara breathed, her face pale as the massive Zyrex command ship loomed into view. It was unlike anything they'd encountered, a behemoth bristling with weapons, ready to wipe the outpost from existence. Ward's face hardened. "This is it. All or nothing." As the flagship charged its main weapon, Mara and Ward exchanged a look, an unspoken understanding that this could be the end. But humans didn't back down. Not now. Not ever. They activated the outpost's last resort weapon, a risky experimental cannon that could either save them or backfire catastrophically. The weapon fired, a blinding lance of energy that speared through the void, striking the heart of the Zyrex flagship. The ensuing explosion lit up the stars, sending shockwaves rippling through space. When the light faded, the flagship was gone, obliterated in a flash of brilliance. Silence fell over the command center as the remaining Zyrex ships faltered, their cohesion shattered. The swarm broke apart, retreating into the dark depths of space. The battle was over, but the victory came at a cost: battered defenses, a depleted arsenal, and a crew barely holding together. Ward exhaled slowly, tension bleeding out of his frame. "We did it," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. Mara leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "They thought they were predators," she murmured. "Turns out, we're the deadliest prey they've ever hunted." The outpost stood, scarred but defiant, a beacon of humanity's resilience. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson: underestimate humans at your peril. They might be outnumbered, but they were never outmatched. Not when survival was on the line.